Hello and welcome back to the Sue Simpson Show podcast. And today I'm meeting a pilgrim I've never met before. His name is Colm. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yeah, I get called lots of variations on it. I remember whenever I was a student living over in England, the variations were wide. But yeah, Colm, yeah, it's the easiest way of pronouncing
it. So, Colm, where are you from?
I'm from Northern Ireland. I live just outside Belfast. But I've lived a number of places over the years, including whenever I was a student. I was based over just south of yourself, on the outskirts of Wakefield.
Oh, lovely.
Used to live in the West Yorkshire Sculpture Park for a while there whenever I was a student at Bretton Hall.
Grisdale?
No, I was based in West Breton, was the tiny village where the West Yorkshire Sculpture Park is. So lived on campus there and then moved into Wakefield where they had more student housing there as well.
Oh, wow.
But yeah.
What were you studying?
I did arts education and specialised in popular music.
Oh, excellent.
So it's quite varied content that was in it, yeah.
So what's your instrument?
It's wide. Initially it was just violin. I started violin whenever I was very, very young, 7 years of age or something. But then as I grew and doing GCSE and A levels, I did piano and guitar took over for a while and pretty much ruined GCSEs. And now as an adult, I went back to learning. And I've been doing the uilleann pipes, which are the Irish.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You'll have the Northumbrian pipes, and I think you might even have Cumbrian pipes.
I'm not Cumbrian, so I wouldn't know. There might be.
You get small pipes as well, but the Irish uilleann pipes, people will recognise the sound.
Yeah, they're beautiful.
They're uilleann, which means elbow in Irish, so they're pumped. So you don't have to blow into them like bagpipes.
Are they similar to the Galician pipes?
They're not too far off. There's actually a lot of Spaniards that do play the uilleann pipes as well. In fact, the more I learn and the more time I'm playing, the further we seem to find people around the world that are playing them. Japan, Argentina, Brazil, they're all over the place. It's great to see and great to hear.
Yeah, there's those Celtic connections everywhere.
Yeah. There's a massive Celtic festival that takes place in France each year, and it is people from across the globe that attend it. And hopefully in the next few years I'll get to go there myself and just see what it's like. I don't think so. I wouldn't be of that standard yet on the pipes. I don't mind playing fiddle once in a while, but the pipes, they're people think the violin's hard because you're playing like a tightrope, but the pipes are worse because you're pressing with one arm to have the right amount of pressure under another arm, and then you're blowing through a reed, and the smallest change can change the pitch. It can change the intonation of the notes. You can end up with hard notes, or you can actually block your reed altogether if you put too much pressure on it. So it's something which we've been told it takes about 20 years to learn to do and then 20 years to master.
Wow.
If we last that long.
If only we'd met on the Camino, we could have had a jam.
Yeah. So like on the Camino, I always carry a wee whistle with me.
Oh, really?
To practice up. Yeah, I carry a tin whistle with me. Which gets some strange looks going through customs and security checks, but you keep practicing.
I met an Australian guy who had a pink guitar, and he lent me the guitar for about 2 hours of the Meseta. So there's pictures of me walking along playing this ridiculously camp guitar, but it's great.
Is that the one you famously shredded?
No, that was the ukulele that I shredded.
Oh, was it the ukulele?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I've got ukuleles about the place as well. I'm in my shed here, called the shed. It's an outdoor office, but yeah, you can't see it on the wall above where the computer is. There's guitars and ukuleles all about the place.
It's a beautiful shed. So why did you do the Camino in the first place? Because I mean, you've done it a bit differently to the way that I and a number of people that I know have done. You keep going back, is that correct?
Yeah. How I got into it in the first place, I was aware of the Camino.
Mm,
I'd heard about it for a number of years, and then for a period of time, my wife and I we lived in Spain.
mm,
Some of the friends that we had there had walked it, or were walking it during their summer holidays. I had other students that were walking it or had done part of it with school. So I was very curious about it, and I've never been one for sitting on a beach doing nothing. I
yeah.
can't do that sort of holiday. I need to be out, whether that's literally walking around a city or just walking through the countryside. I'd rather be doing something than lying on a beach or by a pool doing nothing. It doesn't
Mm,
work for
absolutely.
me. The notion was always there to do it, and it just kept on niggling at me that I want to do this Camino, I want to do the Camino, uh, particularly the Francaise, um, because it's one of my students had talked to me about
Hmm.
that. That's what they did for their summer. She'd go up to the south of France and would walk over the Pyrenees. Um, so it got to a point where my wife just turned around and said, "Well, I let you do it."
Hmm. Just go.
And I have to sort of back that up. Some people might go, "She let you? What do you mean by that?" Um, I'm a father to four kids,
Right. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
and at that time, whenever I was given the okay, which I think was probably 2019, um, we had just had twins in 2018, in
Wow.
September 2018. So they were still quite young. My wife was on maternity leave. So for her to turn around and say, "Yeah, you can go and do the
Hmm.
Camino," was extremely selfless of her. Land
Absolutely.
the time to
Yeah.
get away. She probably didn't realize that really to walk the entire thing would take over a month.
Yeah.
Um, so whenever that did come up, I sort of had to bite the bullet and accept that I wasn't going to get away for an
Hmm.
entire month, leaving four children at home, which is fully understandable. So the way I've been able to do it is that I might get away for a week at a time, and I walk as far as I can in that.
Hmm.
Generally, about 5 7 days of walking. Sometimes I've been able to stretch it to 10 days getting away. But there's a day of travel to get there. There's a day of travel to get back. So I walk as much as I can during those intervening days, and so I walk from point A to point B, go home,
Hmm.
then fly back again. One of the advantages of living so close to Spain, cheap flights. Um, Come back the next time and continue from B to C, go home and keep walking.
Yeah.
So I started in 2019, and from there, each year I go back and get back for about a week or so. Um, and that it seems to be most people either do it in one big go, or they'll take the entire time off,
Yeah.
or if they have a shorter amount of time, they tend to do a smaller section of it. Famously, from Sarria
Yeah.
to Santiago, you can do that in a week easily.
Mm,
Um,
absolutely.
for most easily in a week. So I thought, no, I want to walk the entire thing. I don't want to be skipping bits, and I've disciplined myself to stick to that. It would be very easy for me to get to a point, get a bus on, which in some locations, I think one year I'd stopped in Los Arcos.
Hmm.
So there's no real connections from Los Arcos. There were no there wasn't very good bus routes from Los
Yeah.
Arcos. I think it was like maybe one bus an hour or one bus every 3 hours. So um could have easily just skipped on to Logroño and kept walking from there, but something inside me wants me to know that I've walked every single bit of it.
Yeah. I get that.
Um, so I kept going. I go back to wherever I got to. So Los Arcos or Santo Domingo de la Calzada, wherever it is. Thankfully, the next time I'm going back, which is in June,
Hmm.
it's to Burgos. Easy to get to. There's a
Yeah.
direct train. Life's so
Absolutely.
much better that way.
Burgos is good. You'll enjoy
Yeah.
it.
So that's the way I'm doing it. I've got another 7 days away, a week away. Um, in June. So day of travel, either end. So 5 days of walking, and I'm going to see how much of the Meseta I can get covered um, safely without killing myself. But that means that the training has started,
Excellent.
and I'm
Just
trying to
drink lots of
build up.
water.
Well,
Just take it.
that's actually the hardest part of the training is trying
Yeah.
to down 2 liters of water a day. At least
3.5. It should be 3.5.
it will build
Yeah.
up,
It's
yeah,
hard.
but
It's difficult.
yeah, and as soon as you have that first pee, that's the locks done. You have it
As
open.
men, we're actually a little bit more suited to the Meseta because I
Yeah,
found that a lot of women that I met didn't want to pee outside because of like sort of people and privacy and all the rest of it, and they end
yeah.
up getting more blisters because they're not hydrating properly.
Well, I must admit, every time I've done the Camino, I have, in recollection, I have never had to pee while walking
Oh, really?
because, yeah, I don't know whether it's just been the heat, but
Hmm.
even the last time I went was technically winter.
Hmm.
For them, I I never found the urge to go to the toilet while out walking. Um, so maybe that's something that will crop up, but I could easily down 2 liters, and you probably sweat most of that off.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it would be a very good sign if the urine was a very light color at the end of the day.
It generally
But
is.
yeah,
So yeah,
probably not.
I do pretend to be a lot. So
Yeah.
it's just one of those. So, but I've got very little qualms. I'm just kind of like, well, if you've got a problem with it, that's your problem. I need a pee, so I'm gonna just find a tree, you know.
Yeah, I think if it did need to go, it'd probably make me walk faster.
Actually, there was one point with a friend of mine who had to do the other thing, and there was no cafes or anything around,
Oh,
and oh, it was an absolute nightmare. The one problem, well, one of the problems with the Camino Frances in general, especially at the start of it, not so much in Galicia, is all the as we would call it, the chocolate paper around. Basically, people would use the yeah, it's a bit of an issue. I don't know how they
yeah.
clean that up, literally.
Well, that's at home here. Whenever I do go walking, I actually carry a litter picker with me,
Mm,
and I have some black plastic bags in my hip pockets of my rucksack. So if I do spot stuff, I can pick it up. Which at home it tends to be more dog poop bags,
yeah,
unfortunately. But that is one of my sort of pet hates is litter, and even more so along the Camino
yeah.
because I can understand that sometimes things might fall out of your pocket. You stuff things in, you keep walking, maybe you don't notice.
Mm.
But at other times along the Camino, it's very clear that
People just chuck stuff, don't
people have chucked stuff, they don't care enough.
they? Mm.
And that gives pilgrims a bad name.
Yeah.
And that's not really the ideal. So, um, yeah, I if it's a number two that needs to be done, that's something that isn't coming out unless you're taking a cat hole and burying it, which really isn't ideal either.
Mm.
Uh, it's if you're bringing it in to the Camino, you take it out of the Camino.
Absolutely. So the message is pilgrims, pick up your poop.
Yeah, stick it in a sealable bag, hide it
Take it
somewhere up
absolutely.
your rucksack so
Yeah.
nobody
If you
steals
can
it off
if you
you.
can do it with the dog, you can do it with your own, and it's not
Yeah,
that difficult.
no,
One of the most important things about the Camino for me was making like my Camino family. I was kind of like going, I'll do this on my own. And very quickly I met some people and became very close and we're going to be friends for life probably. But with you doing it like in small sections, do you keep picking up different families every time you go? Or is it how is that for you?
yeah, I think it's I it's one of those things I don't think you can help but not pick up a Camino family,
Mm,
or at least you get to know people that you see every single day, no matter where in the world they're from or what language they're speaking. You might not be able to speak the same language at any point, but you'll be able to nod, wink,
yeah.
wave. There's a conversation that goes on there which acknowledges that you're both on the same journey. And yeah, I do it solo, so I literally rock up and hope for the best.
Yeah.
I have never booked a night's accommodation ahead of time. I walk as far as I'm going to get to, and then find somewhere to sleep. So it is very easy to fall out of sync
Hmm.
with that Camino family that you
Yeah.
might start a journey with. But I must admit, the best experience I had was definitely in 2019 whenever I first started, because you did meet those same people over the number of days, and the conversations got very deep
Mm.
and very personal and um, very open. And that was very humbling and very insightful, and encouraged me um, to keep going, to keep walking, and maybe made me fall in love with the Camino experience even more.
Mm.
I went back in 2020. Now, we had the March lockdown in the
Yeah.
UK. Spain was very badly affected. Italy was all closed off by that point, and nobody was really going anywhere for a few months. And I had been booked to fly out in March, and those flights were cancelled. As soon as Spain opened up on the 1st of July and we were allowed to travel, I booked flights and
Yeah.
literally went. As soon as it opened, I booked flights and went back the following week. And it was extremely quiet. Extremely, you would have had an entire room just to yourself.
Wow.
And I the numbers were really, really low as well. I think there was one Spanish man that I met a number of times and had quite a few conversations with. But then I also came across two from the UK.
Hmm.
A young lady from Liverpool who was, I think, from recollection, she was a trucker, and she had felt the need to do the Camino and had asked for time off from work. They wouldn't give her the full month off, so she actually left her job to go
Wow.
and do it.
Yeah.
So that's is all in the middle of, for most people, still lockdowns
Mm.
across most of the world. But there was also a gentleman who thought I was Spanish for the first few days that we kept
Yeah.
bumping into each other, and it was only afterwards when we were literally nearly passing each other every single day, and I think it might have been a lapse. Instead of saying buen camino or hola, it was how you doing, and
Yeah.
sort of, I thought you were Spanish. No, no, no. He was a teacher from England. It was the summer holidays, and he was walking. So I wasn't the only person from the UK or Ireland that had sort of literally jumped and taken the opportunity to get back to the Camino as quickly as possible. And even in the last time, there were people that were on a completely different journey. They had started from Saint Jean and they were continuing to walk, and just happened to be that we fell into the same sort of steps,
Mm.
and that sort of camaraderie immediately builds up, and it's strange how quickly it builds
It's
up.
weird, isn't it? It's a beautiful thing. I
Yeah,
mean, I went thinking that's going to be my only time. I'm never going to do it ever again. It's going to be once in a lifetime. And now there's part of me kind of going, no, I'm definitely going to be going back at some point. I don't know which
yeah,
Camino, but there's going to be some point in my life where I need to go back. I don't know why, but those connections that you make with people are so important.
yeah, definitely. And it's a weird, for anyone that hasn't done it, it is the weirdest experience, because there's nowhere else in the world that you would go to and freely open up to
Yeah.
people and share and give stuff away and accept things from people so freely
Mm.
as you would on the Camino. Like, random people will give you food or drink, and if you're in the mood, you'll definitely take it and eat it or drink it.
Mm.
I don't think there's anywhere else, that any other holiday that I've ever been on, that I'd go, yeah, 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 I'd do that, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
It feels like it's life how life should be.
yes, definitely, and I can emphasize it is a completely different experience of Spain than you will have any other way. Going to Madrid, or my wife and I, we lived in the south of Spain in Almeria for a year, and it was a completely different experience. Seeing each individual village, experiencing that with other people and being able to talk about it, um, physically experiencing the landscape, not driving over it,
Yeah.
not flying over it, walking through the trees, the fields, the vineyards. Um, you just don't get that anywhere else.
It's
You know, the
beautiful,
Camino is the
absolutely.
only real experience you'll get of that.
So do you feel like I mean, because there's lots of stuff which we get from the Camino, but I think it's a symbiotic thing. Do you think that you gave a lot to it as well, or do you're continuing to give stuff to it?
Blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so at sometimes it has been blood, sweat, and
yeah.
tears. Uh, but there's a massive amount of effort and dedication that the Camino asks of us. There's long distances to be walked. Uh, at certain times of the year, the temperatures can be very demanding, extremely hot or extremely cold. Um, and I would have to say we do have to give that back to it.
Hmm.
It gives us an experience with other people, an experience with ourselves in our own minds and our own hearts. Um, and you won't get that if you're not going to give back.
Yeah, it
And
teaches
it
you a
is,
lot of lessons.
yeah, and it is giving your own blood, sweat, and tears, whether that's blisters and
Hmm.
the pus that comes out of those, or slipping and falling, cutting yourself, or whatever it may be, um, or just personal reflection because you have a lot of time to yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah, you do end up giving it back. And then there's the experience with other people
Yeah.
that you'll suddenly find that somebody's walking along, for example, they might have dropped something and you might recognize it from some other pilgrim that you've seen. You will pick that up, and you could be traveling for another 10 kilometers or 2 days carrying that one item
Hmm.
in case you see that person, and you would give it back to them, and they'll find that really strange. And that whole the Camino gives what you need.
Yeah. That changed my life.
That's yeah,
That moment.
it's a circular. You know, people do it to you,
Yeah.
you do it to other people, and yeah, it makes the whole thing really worthwhile.
Absolutely. And I mean, at one point, I found what's it called? Like a ruffle thing that people wear over the
Yeah,
neck.
yeah,
And it came and went, and I kept thought losing it, and then it came from nowhere, and then it just disappeared into nowhere. But also, there was a hat that Andre, my German friend, dropped, and I'd only met him once, and then I picked up this hat, and then basically I found him, got on the hat just before the border of the Pyrenees, and we continued to walk all the way to Santiago from there because he dropped his hat. It was one of those it
yeah.
was a beautiful thing. It was such a symbolic moment. But to me, I mean, you're Irish, okay? There's a big sort of Catholic thing in Ireland and all the rest of it. Was that at all part of your reasons for doing the Camino?
Well, I must say that the Catholic thing in Ireland um, has really died out. It's not as strong as it used to be,
Yeah,
unfortunately. But that's true for many
around the
European
world,
countries.
yeah.
But yeah, I was brought up a Catholic, went to Catholic schools, still go to mass.
Hmm.
My children undergo the sacraments as well. So the Catholicism part didn't really play a massive part into the reason why I was doing the Camino. But while I have been doing the Camino, it does play in. So when I am there walking, if it's a Sunday, I do make sure I go to mass.
Yeah.
I don't understand. My Spanish isn't of a level, even after living in Spain. You know, it's an embarrassment and everything. But I understand more than I can speak. So following the mass isn't that bad. But yeah, I try to make sure that I do go to mass
Yeah.
whenever I am walking Camino, and when I do have the chance, I do take the opportunity to stop in to the churches as much out of curiosity.
Mm.
One of the things they tell you not to talk about in Spain is the Civil War. But coming from Northern Ireland, that had our own
Yeah.
troubles, is the easiest way of phrasing it and well notated for it. The notion of not talking about the Civil War I find very strange. but there's so many sites and areas where there are small monuments to remember people that were murdered. There's
Yeah,
no other real way of putting it. And knowing that there was sort of a revolt against the church and the patriarchy, to see that there's so much still in place, that there's so much history in those buildings, and in many cases so much grandeur. I find that really fascinating. That there's so much that survived what really wrecked the country for a
absolutely.
significant number of years. Um, so yeah, it's not a driving factor, but my faith does play into it,
Mm.
whether I like it or not.
Absolutely. I was brought up a Catholic myself and had very
Yeah,
much a similar sort of background, but I did have a falling out with the church because of my sexuality. And so it was that side of the Camino was really interesting for me because I was still drawn to go to the churches and looking at the grandeur of the whole thing. And when I got
yeah.
to, you won't have got to Leon yet, have you?
No, no.
Oh, when you
That's
get, oh my
that's
goodness.
that's if I can stretch my days to sort of 30, 35 kilometers,
Mm.
I might make it to Leon. But I think at the most I might make it to Sahagun. But
Oh, there's a place in Sahagun you really should stop at. I wish I could remember that, but it was called. I will have a look up for you. There's basically you can go and you can stop with it's like an old monastery,
yeah,
and you stop in the rooms and there's like crucifixes everywhere and go to mass there and there's communal meal and you get a chat to the priest and never you can get around and have a cup of coffee and they'll ask why you're there
yeah.
and it's wonderful. It's so cathartic. It's such a nice experience. So yeah, Sahagun is brilliant. You'll love it.
But see, in the same sense, people of all faiths would go to Rome and happily go around
Absolutely.
Silica and stuff. So the notion of people going and visiting churches, I think, is great. And um, even those that are of no faith, just even go and see it. There's so much history to them.
Mm.
I'd be I'd say quite a liberal Catholic in one sense. There's some things that I'm very fixed on
Hmm.
in my faith, and then there's some things where I think the church really has got the wrong stick for quite a number of
Yeah.
years. I think the current pope is trying to change those things. He might be trying to paddle uh, against the tide
Yeah.
for some elements of the church, but I think Pope Francis is really working hard to try and change things for the
Yeah.
better.
Absolutely. He seems like a
Um,
good man.
but he's only one man.
Exactly. He's fighting a very long history.
Yeah, a long history of wrongdoing
Mm.
and persecution, which I think is very unchristian of him.
Absolutely.
But
Uh,
that's just my opinion.
no, and that's what we're here to talk about. So is the Camino for everybody? Do you think?
Do you know? I think it is,
Mm.
in the sense that for every individual, it brings its own challenges. I have seen people walking it with children,
Mhm.
and for me, the notion of bringing my children to walk the Camino is a massive no. That is too much of a hurdle for me.
Yeah.
But people do it, and they find a way through it. There are people that do the Camino with severe disabilities.
Yeah.
They are supported by other groups, by other individuals who give their time up, but they do it. There are people that have um, mental issues
Yeah.
or depression, and they, I think, people that do it, whether it's a physical or a mental disability or blockage, whatever you want to call it, they all get their own little thing out of it, whatever it is for them. You'd spoken in previous
Mhm.
podcasts about your own issues and the difficulties
Yes.
that you were finding on
Mm.
the Camino, and yet you still got something out of it.
Oh, massively. Absolutely.
So I think it depends on the individual. There are difficulties about the Camino.
Mm.
Some of them might be monstrous. Um, it could be there is some mental blockage that you just can't get past, and if that's the case, you might have learned where that where that line is.
Yeah.
You know, you'll take away something from it, or you might set that line and go, right, well, I want, that's where I want to break past. That's what I need to address. So yeah, I think it is for everyone, but at different levels, you know.
Absolutely. And you do a YouTube channel all about the Camino. I was very impressed.
It's not all about the Camino, but the Camino feeds into it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had, because the children were at home,
Mhm.
they were always asking, "No, where's Daddy? What's Daddy doing?" So one of my daughters, the eldest daughter, before I left, sort of said, "Will you send me a video?" I was like, "Yeah, I can do that." My day job would be doing social media and websites and video content and photography. So doing a video seemed like a natural thing to do. So I had downloaded an app onto my phone
Mhm.
where I could cut and edit the videos. So I'd started doing them primarily for the children.
Yeah.
So whenever they woke up the next morning, I'd have sat the night before editing on a small phone a video together for them to watch to see where Daddy had been, what he had done the day before. But I didn't want to pitch it at just at a childish level where I'm maybe talking baby speak to them and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I sort of left it as it was, as I would say it to any other person. So the children could watch a video each morning. So that's how my evenings were made up. Whether that's how I do it going forward, I'm not too sure, because whenever you're sitting editing, it can take quite a lot of time, quite a lot of focus, and sometimes it's time when I should have been sleeping, whenever maybe the accommodation might have been a bit quieter,
Yeah.
and I should have taken that opportunity and didn't. So that's something which I'm going to sort of figure out for myself in the next couple of months before I go away. One aspect that does feed into that is that my latest phone that I have, the app that I used and loved, isn't available.
Oh dear.
So that sort of puts a dampener on that one, and I don't want to be carrying a laptop with me to do edits.
Yeah.
I try to travel with as small a pack as possible, which is why I'm going back sort of summer months as opposed to winter. Winter months you end up carrying a lot more, but summer months you can literally go with a t-shirt and a pair of shorts, go commando, and you know, you've very little washing to do, you know.
Yeah, very little washing to do indeed.
A 20 liter pack, you know, you can get away with it if you really want. But yeah, the videos that are on there, it tries to document. Some of them are better than others. Some days you have the time, some days you just can't be bothered, you know.
Absolutely,
the focus is on keeping one foot in front of the other and walking. But on the channel, yeah, there's other stuff. There's days out with the family and kids, and other wee bits and pieces. Yeah, so yeah, I like to stick stuff out. The kids like watching themselves.
Excellent. So if people, we've got to come to the, we've got to wrap it up, unfortunately, because we're getting to the end of the allotted time. If people want to watch your videos, where do they look?
You can search on YouTube, Colm McCann. It's probably the easiest. You'll see an image of a grey-haired fellow. I think that's the icon that's on it at the moment anyway. Or use the hashtag Colm McCann, all one word, and it'll hopefully bring me up.
I'll put a link in the description as well for any of the listeners.
Well, thank you very much.
I've got so many questions that I still want to ask you, but I don't have the time. So if you want to come back once you've done the next part of the Camino, then I'd love to have you come back again.
Yeah, I'll be away in the middle of June. So if anyone's walking in the middle of June, from the 14th to whatever the week after that is, the 21st, if they are walking along that Burgos to Leon sort of Meseta part, and they see a grey-haired fella, feel free to chat, say hello.
Yeah.
Be more than welcome, and yeah, I'd be happy to come back, Stu. Yeah.
Excellent. Don't listen to any of the nonsense people say about the Meseta's boring. It's one of the most
it looks beautiful.
It is amazing. It's incredible. It's probably one of my favorite bits.
Just trying to plan where I can get a drone up in the air so that I can get footage, because I see people using drones around the cities and that, but I'm a stickler for rules, and I'm registered for flying the drone, so my ID shows up whenever my drone goes up in the air.
Yeah.
And in a city, you're not supposed to be flying in cities most of the time, and that's pretty risky. But I really want to break the rules. But I'll have to wait and see. I'll chance my arm, maybe take my ID off my drone.
Excellent. Well, let me come back and let me tell me if you've broken the rules or not. So one last thing must have to say to you, is, other than thank you very much, it's been a pleasure to meet you, I must say, buen camino.
Muchas gracias, señor.
De nada. Thank you very much, Colm, and hopefully I'll see you when you're back in June.
Thank you very much, Stu. Thanks everyone for listening.
Take care, mate.
Bye.
Bye.